So, as I explained earlier, we've got a bolster, kind of optional, a brick and a block. And this evening's class works on the hips quite a lot. So it's the rotation of the hip joint and opening the groins out a little bit as well. We're going to start in child's pose, and you can take that with the knees really any distance apart. So you can go as wide as the mat, or you can go narrow. The differences between the two are whether you're working into your spine or whether you're just working into the hips. You could roll the bolster underneath or a rolled up blanket and actually rest your torso on that, which again changes the shape of the spine. So you can work in whichever way you like. If you find it a little tight on the knees, just placing a block behind the bottom, heels and buttocks, just changes the angle in the knees and gives you a little bit of respite there. We're going to try and bring the head down towards the floor. Now, if the head doesn't get there, we can either use our hands or we can bring a block. So we lift the floor up a little bit. And if that feels comfortable, so probably give yourself a little longer just to let the knees and the hips and the lower back sort themselves out a little bit. It'll take a little while to kind of transition into the pose. It can be anything from sort of 30 seconds to a minute for the muscles to start to feel like they're loosening off a little bit. When we first sit into this, the calves particularly can feel a bit tight. So if you feel comfortable, there's an option to take your hands towards your toes. Let the shoulders relax. And there is indeed a further option that we could run with, which is to lift the hands away from the floor and place them onto the back of the pelvis, just holding one hand or one wrist with the other. And that gives you a little bit more weight down the sort of into the hips, the tailbone, pelvis area. So it's not a great deal of weight extra, but it will be a little bit. And that can help feeling like there's a bit more weight in the body, giving the muscles an opportunity to release a little deeper. The breath should be unimpaired, easy and smooth. And if it's not, then maybe you need to move the knees out a little further or bring the hands back underneath the head. A nice calming exchange of breath to thoughts and mind. And then we're going to lift slowly back out of that. And we'll bring ourselves into Sphinx pose. So the only difference is this evening, this version of Sphinx pose is going to actually bring the forearms across the body rather than out to the front. So the elbows are a little ahead of the shoulders, and then I'm going to let the body kind of sink down to the floor. So the shoulders will feel like they're squeezing together a little bit. They'll lift up around the ears. The chest kind of sinks towards the floor. You can hold the head wherever it feels easy to hold. Feet are about hip distance apart, bootlaces down. I'm trying to let my lower back and my belly relax, and also my buttocks. and the backs and the fronts of my legs, which takes a little bit of time to release, just like all of our muscles. I'm looking for mild compression feeling in the lower spine and a bit of stretch in the shoulders and across the chest and under the armpits. And then we're going to let ourselves come down to the floor. So hands going to come underneath the chin and the elbows out to the side. And bring the feet onto the center line. We get out the hips a little from side to side. I'm going to slide my right knee out to the side 90 degrees to my body. Allow myself to take the shin to follow the line of the mat, toes pointing out. Heads turn to the left as well. Sorry, to the right. Getting my lefts and rights mixed up. Making a big effort to let that bottom straight leg relax. You might roll into the hip a little bit. Wherever you feel the body is taking you to in terms of a direction, either down or sideways, just let it continue to move and see where it takes you. You might feel the bent leg out to the side, opening up a little bit as well through the groins. Bring the foot back on. And we're going to come back into the Sphinx pose. I'm going to bring with the hands forwards and parallel forearms. And I'm going to let myself lift up a little bit more. Now, if you find that the lift is okay in your spine, but troublesome in the arms and the shoulders, you can actually bring the bolster underneath your body and bring that in as far into you as you can. So it kind of wedges you up and takes a little bit of the strain out of the arms. Otherwise, we're going to kind of just press the hands into the floor and lift up a little bit. So now the shoulders are feeling like they're being driven towards the back of the mat and up a little bit. And a higher degree of compression in the lower spine. If you've lifted up and you find that really your breathing isn't easy, it's a little impaired, that is the sign for you to come back down again. Now you might feel that your breathing is going away because you're working harder to hold yourself up. Again, you can choose where you hold your head. I actually find holding the head up in this pose a little bit easier. But I think that might be, you know, individual to different people's spine, and therefore their experience of that will be different. Some people can walk their hands in a lot further and lift up a lot higher. They've got higher degree of mobility in the spine. The gaps between the vertebrae are bigger, therefore they've got more range. So you allow yourself to walk in wherever it feels comfortable. Get to the point where your hands are directly underneath your shoulders and you've managed to bend yourself at 90 degrees. I'd probably say it was worth stopping there. Let ourselves gently come back down to the floor, and we're going to take that half frog pose again. So just bring the feet together on the center line, wriggle out the hips. Then we'll slowly take the left leg out 90 degrees, toes pointing out. And this time we'll turn the head to the left, and I actually mean the left. But I'm going to look the other way just so I can keep my eyes on the clock. So a definite case of don't do as I do, do as I say. And some people like to actually have their head more in line with their body, so you can bring the hands underneath the forehead, like little potatoes to rest upon. That feels easier. Quite often in this pose, you can feel a difference in the rib cage from one side to the other. So the sense of feeling of comfort in the torso might be different, and that will affect how you're able to relax in the shoulders and the hips and the legs. Hopefully it feels relatively comfortable, and you can allow yourself to sink into the pose. Bring the leg back onto the mat, lengthen that out. Gentle wriggle through the hips. And it feels like it's all moved back into place. Going to turn the hands down towards the bottom of the ribs, roll the shoulders back. Pressing to the floor on an exhale, lift ourselves gently up onto all fours. And we're going to move into saddle pose. So we're going to bring the knees together, take the feet a little wider than you think your hips are. And in my case, I'm going to use the block and just place that underneath my sitting bones as I sit back. But again, you want to just check how that feels in the knee joints in the calves. We are trying to open up joints and stretch the tendons and ligaments, particularly in the knees and the ankles in this, working a little bit into the hips as well. So you could bring a block and then place a brick across it, so your both sitting bones are supported, or you could use the short end of a long bolster, which would give you a lot of height. Again, you should be able to breathe easily, and you can bring your hands gently onto your thighs. A nice way to place the hands is relaxing for the mind and also the shoulders, kind of a calming mudra. So the hands is the left hand down, palm facing up, right hand on top, and then the thumbs are touching, fingers are just directly lengthened out so they're not interlaced. It's more like you're holding your hand. And then that allows you to sit up nice and straight and just relax your shoulders out to wherever is their natural place to relax too. And then we're going to move from here into the first of our lunges, which is a low flying dragon. Use the hands to press into the floor and lift up gently and move that block out of the way. Going to come onto all fours and just slowly stretch the legs out a little bit, one leg at a time. So it feels like they've come back to life a little bit. Now I'm going to bring my right foot through between my hands. So fingers and toes line up and knee over the ankle. And then I'm going to walk the back foot away and let the hips sink down to the floor. And I'm trying to keep the hands flat to the ground. If you need to use bricks underneath your hands to make the ground a little closer to you, if you've got shorter arms, then that's fine. And I'm going to let the body sink into that front leg. So I start to take my knee a little more towards the toes. I'm changing the angle, the relationship between that front knee and ankle. You might still want to walk the fingers forwards a little bit, just so it feels like the hands are more underneath the shoulders. And we're trying to let the hips sink down, so soft belly, letting all the muscles in the legs, hips react and loosen off. And start to move back onto all fours. Just taking a couple of moments to let the energy of that stretch out of the body. And then when you feel ready in your own time, you're going to bring the opposite foot forwards. And again, just make sure your knee is over your ankle and lift the back leg and just walk that out a little bit. So it's getting a nice angle there. And we'll bring the hands flat to the floor again. Now, I do notice that when I'm on this side, it's a little more tricky to put the hands to the ground. And that's because the ribs are slightly different shape on one side of the body to the other. Again, you might want to walk the hands forwards a little bit. You can use any props you need underneath the hands, the head hangs. And just dropping the hips down towards the floor. You might roll out, they might hang out to the side a little bit. Not a problem. Just trying to relax everything downwards. Nice progressive feeling and stretching from the end of the muscles all the way through the body of the muscle into the opposite end of the muscle. And sometimes referred to in textbooks as the origin and insertion points at the two ends where the muscles attach to the tendons. And then we'll lift again back out of that onto all fours. And this is where the option of moving the bolster, if you have one, or your bricks and blocks to the front of the mat, become useful. So I'll come from all fours and take my right foot just off of the mat a little bit. I'm going to place the heel on, but the toes are off to the side. So the foot is hanging out 45 degrees-ish. I'm going to lift the back knee and let that walk back as far as I can, letting the hips drop down to the floor, and then roll that bolster underneath the body. Allow myself to just bring the forearms down nicely. And so you could use bricks. Some people can get down to the floor very easily. Some people like to leave the toes tucked under on the back foot. Some people like to lengthen it out. It's really whatever feels nicest on your kneecap, your patella. And again, they're all going to be different from person to person, and even side to side, and even month to month. Winter months might feel a little bit different if you're in a body that's old as mine to the summer. Just letting that sink down to the floor again. If there's any rolling out to the side, just kind of let the body absorb it. As long as you're not in danger of actually falling over, it's good. I kind of roll onto the outside edge of that front foot out to the side a little bit, but again, optional where you place the foot, how it feels against the floor, as long as the knee is able to hang out to the side and feel good. Just got a few more breaths here. And then we're going to walk ourselves back out of that. So bring the hands underneath, move the bolster out of the way just to give myself a little bit of space. Back onto all fours. Again, you might want to stretch the legs out in between. And then when you're ready with the hands underneath the shoulders, we'll take the opposite leg out. Allow ourselves to bring that bolster in. Walk the back foot as far back as we can. And ease down. Now, most of the time in my body, I can actually get all the way to the floor, but it requires a lot more effort. And in this particular practice, I'm trying to be a little softer with the body so that there is the chance to hang into the joints and let myself release. We're getting bigger stretch through the shoulders, bigger stretch into the hips. It's a different kind of stretch to the warm, flowing vinyasa type stretches that we get. And it has a very different purpose. I'm going to lift back out of that. And try to move my bolster out of the way. It seems to be a bit stuck to the floor. And I'm going to come down onto all fours, onto my bottom. Just going to move the brick out of the way a little bit. Now, for the next series of poses, we're going to use the block. So I'm going to have that close by towards the front of the mat. I'm actually going to come onto all fours. And we're going to work on a seated pose that requires us to cross the legs quite a strong way. Now I'm going to take the left knee forwards and then cross the legs over. So my left thigh is now on top of my right, squeezing the thighs together. You can have a little time just to kind of move the flesh around a little bit so it feels more comfortable. The left foot is hanging out to the side of the mat on the right. It's just clear of the mat. I'm going to pivot on the right knee and let the right foot move over towards the left. And then I'm going to slowly sit back. And as I do, I'm going to place my block underneath my sitting bones. Cow face legs. We could certainly bring the shins further forwards on either side, but we want to be comfortable. So if you're able to move them into a wider setting, then great. But otherwise, as long as you landed and felt comfortable in the knees and the hips, and you can feel some work going on in the hips, that's fine. I'm going to turn my body gently towards the left side and allow that to become a gentle twist through the spine as well. Again, if the fingers of the backhand weren't on the floor, you could bring one of your props in to lift the floor up a little higher. Doing my best to bring my spine into an upright position. I'm not really extending through the spine. I'm just trying to be aware of where it is in space and time. Asking myself the question, does that feel like I'm leaning forwards, backwards, or sideways? And I'm going to let myself bring the spine back to face to the front of the mat. Use the fingers to press into the floor, draw myself forwards, untangle the legs, move the block out. Into that well-known tabletop position, knees together. Right leg comes through and forwards, cross over again. I take a little time to wriggle the thighs in. So you notice that kind of rock backwards and forwards a little bit to help with that. Allowing the feet to go out wider. And then just checking how that feels. Starting to move backwards. You can always use a bigger block, a brick, or very neatly folded blanket into some nice squares, giving you a bit more height. Once you've arrived and you've checked that you can still breathe okay with your legs in this position, we'll turn gently to the right. Asking yourself, am I sitting up straight? What's happening in my pelvis? How can I get it into a neutral position and allow my spine to sit up tall? Where do I have to let go a little more to get a better purchase on that floor or block? It takes a degree of confidence, and that can come from familiarity to let those legs release. I'm going to slowly release. Let spine turn back towards the front of the mat. I'll use the hands again to press down into the ground. Bring ourselves forwards. I'll bring my trusty block with me. Allow myself to untangle my legs and give them a little stretch out. And back onto all fours. And taking that left knee forwards and across. A little easier to move into the pose a little more speedily, but still being very conscious about how I move in. So rather than just going, I know where I'm going, how does it feel as I'm arriving? Sitting up tall. Once you've arrived, I'm going to take the left hand, fingertips to the floor to the side, just on the ground. I'm going to take my right arm up until my arm touches my ear, and then bend at the elbow and let the hand relax down over towards that left side. I'll walk the left hand out as far as I comfortably can, whilst I honestly keep both sitting bones on the ground. And then I'm going to bring the palm flat to the floor, take a breath, and then I'm going to soften that left elbow. And see if I can get a little deeper and longer. So I'm starting to really feel the stretch down the side of the body. Press into that bottom hand, walk the fingers in to help the spine lift up. Release that right hand back down to the floor. Lean forwards gently. Bring my block with me again. Tangle my legs. Stretch them out if you need to. And then starting in all fours with the knees together. Last side. Right leg comes forwards. Crosses over. Allow myself to get a nice position with the thighs and the feet out to the side, and then easing my way back. Bringing the block to the ground. Checking that it feels okay in the legs. The right hand comes down to the floor, just touching it out to the side. Left arm goes up, bending the elbow. Walk the fingers out towards the right, nice and slowly, letting yourself keep your sitting bones to the floor. When you think you've gone as far as you can, you let the palm come flat to the ground. Make sure you feel safe, and then bend a little into that bottom elbow. Now, do try and draw the shoulder blade back a little bit so it doesn't sort of hop round towards the front of the mat. It's only a sort of a movement out of the way more than anything else. And breathing easy, I can feel long stretch down the side of the body. I can feel that inside the body, but I can also feel it in all the muscles on the outside edge. So more than a single dimension of awareness in this pose. Press into the floor, walk fingers back in to help with the lift. Bring ourselves back. So I'm going to untangle the legs. Let them let out in front a little bit. Going to move off the block. Just take that out to the side a little bit. And if you find sitting up difficult in a straight 90-degree kind of way, if you sort of roll the tailbone down and your spine rounds a little bit and you slump, just take your hands behind, roll the shoulders back and allow yourself to use them to help sit up. I'm going to try and just let the calves and the heels and as much of the back of the legs rest down to the ground. We're going to relax toes and feet. So hopefully those legs are like 2 plates of jelly. That's what we were aiming for. I'm going to take the brick and the block and just place one on top of the other. So brick on top of block onto the right side of the mat. I'm going to shuffle my bottom towards the, or nearer towards the front of the mat. The feet and knees together, chin in towards the chest. I'll allow myself to draw myself down to the floor. Now, as I arrive, wriggle and release the shoulders and take the hands out wide, crucifix style. Allow the hips to shimmy over towards the left side of the mat and lengthen the right leg out. I bring my left foot, place that just on top of my right thigh. And then I'm going to let my legs and my hips roll over towards the right side, try to keep the shoulders on the ground. I'm going to see if I can get the brick and the block to support that leg in some way. Now, if you've got a bolster, you can put the bolster underneath the shin, the knee, and the ankle and support the foot. And that's a really comfortable place to be. Some people would be able to rotate enough to get the leg all the way to the ground, so you wouldn't need any props. You use the right hand on top of that leg to just allow that to find a comfortable place. Wriggle the shoulders around a little bit. Make sure that they lay down to the floor. I'm going to turn the head gently to the left as well. And then we're going to release from here. Bring our body back into alignment on the center line. And move my trusty bricks and blocks, or bolsters if you have them, over to the other side. Arms out wide, we're going to shimmy the hips to the right, lengthen the left leg out. Bring the right foot on top, that left thigh, roll over gently. Just have a little look. Make sure I'm in the vicinity of where I want to be in the twist. I've got the shoulders round, get them as flat to the floor as I can. Allow myself to use that left hand on the thigh. In my case, I'm just holding on to the knee a little bit. And then turning the head towards the right. I'm going to slowly release. Bring the spine back into alignment. Okay. Take the block underneath the back of the head so that it's underneath the head rather than pressing into the neck or the shoulders. I'll bring out the hips and lengthen the spine out, so making sure that my spine is as long as it can possibly be. I'm going to come into happy baby pose, so just drawing the knees in towards the body lightly. Maybe then move out to the outside edges of the mat, slide the fingers down towards the feet or the ankles. So before you try and hold on to your ankles, onto your feet, hold on to ankles to start with. Let the legs sink down and wide, and notice how flat your tailbone and the back of your pelvis feel. Now, if you reach forwards and take hold of the little toe side of the feet, and it feels like that has changed dramatically, then just bring the hands back onto the ankles. Either option, we're going to let the shins and the soles of the feet move a little bit. So we're going to direct the soles of the feet to the sky, and we're going to use the arms in some way to draw the legs down towards the ground. So knees are wide apart, shins are kind of getting too close to vertical. Quite a wide setting on the gait of the body. We're trying to keep that spine and pelvis as flat to the floor as it had been previously. I always manage to leave for the clock in just the wrong position and having to lift my head and look through my legs. So that's not part of the pose. Let me show you. We'll be here for about another minute or so. And so let the feet slowly come back in towards the bottom. Let the knees come back into the center. And we're going to slowly roll onto our right side, using the hands to press into the floor to lift back up. Now, let's move that block out of the way and towards the front of the mat. Let myself come up onto all fours. Once I've done that, the knees are about hip distance apart. The head is in line with the rest of the body. I'm going to tuck the toes of the right foot under and slide that leg back. Straighten the leg out, press out through the heel, draw the belly in a little bit, and then slide my foot gently out to the right side of the mat. Let the sole of the foot come to the floor, press the foot, the groins, and the shin down in that order. Bring the fingers in towards your body to let yourself lift up. Now I'm going to take the right hand onto the right thigh and take the left hand up until my arm and my ear are almost touching. And I try and keep that distance the same, and then walk the fingers down the right leg into that side bend. I'm going to draw the belly in, let the chest lengthen out, stretch the fingers off to the right side. I'm still pressing down into the shin, the groin, and the outstretched foot. And I'll bring everything back. And we'll take gate pose to the second side. So I'm just going to slide the foot back, bring the knee in, tuck the toes of the opposite leg, lengthen out, little press out through the heel, and slide the leg forwards, foot down, groins down just to stabilize and square the hips off a little bit, press into the shins, draw the belly in, fingers come back, we lift, walk the left hand down the thigh, and then take the right hand up, ear and arm meet, and then we walk the fingers down a little further to the left leg. I'm still pressing into the same position as we had, so foot down, groins down, shin down, top arm stretching up and out, turning the chest square to the front of the mat, maybe lifting the heart up a little bit as we extend it out to the side. You can start to feel a little bit more of a narrowing down the long side of your body. One more breath, and we'll come back. As we come back, bring the knees forwards, put onto the heels. Now take the block behind for a seated twist. Just taking the hands out to the sides, moving nicely on the block. Legs out in front. Now bring the left foot underneath and out towards that right hip. Allow yourself to take the right foot across, foot flat to the floor and the knee high. Tilt the pelvis forwards, let the heart lift up. Take the left hand towards the sky, rotate to the right, let the arm and leg meet. Again, both sitting bones on the floor. Think about the evenness of weight through the cheeks. Are you sitting on one side only? Do you think you're leaning forwards or backwards in any particular way? Belly is drawn in towards the spine. The breath is a little more into the chest and ribs. And a release. Untangle the legs. Final side. Right arm lifts. Rotate through. Look over that rear shoulder. Heart lifts. Pelvis tilts forwards. Think about the weight through the sitting bones. How do you need to move your body, if at all, to get that a little more neutral for weight distribution? And we'll release from there. And come back to untangling the legs. I'm going to come into Shavasana, which you could take flat to the floor. You could use your block, or you could unravel your blanket a little bit to make yourself a nice cushion. Come into that. Knees are high, or you roll onto your side, chin in towards chest, hands behind to support. And the legs gently move out to the corner edges of the mat. Got quite a nice long rest here. So we're going to just allow ourselves to flip-flop the feet backwards and forwards. So literally pointing them and extending, flex and extend, flex and extend. So the feeling is of the legs lengthening out a little bit and a little bit of a rock through the hips as they lengthen out. Wriggle the shoulders out as well. Wrists and the fingers have a little shake out. And then you're going to just let that ease off a little bit. The movements become smaller and smaller and smaller until there's nothing left. You're just being still. Licking the lips as we close the eyes, letting the muscles of the face relax. And then all we need to do is listen to our own breath. We're going to start to stretch those fingers and toes. Breathe a little deeper. Take some movement into the wrists and ankles. To bring ourselves back into the room and into our bodies, we can take a nice long stretch, whatever that needs to look like. And then once that's taken place, we'll slide the heels in towards the bottom and allow the knees to come into the body for a final gentle, easy hug. Again, just allow that to form naturally. See how it fits in your body. And then we're going to roll gently onto the right side. Let the legs go down. The hands underneath the head to make a little pillow. Take an extra breath there. And then use the hands to press down into the floor to lift up. Just being careful of those elbows. And that lift. Coming into a sitting posture, sitting up tall. Nice long relaxed spine, hands into heart, eyes closed. On the exhale of your next breath, let your head drop, chin to chest, belly to the spine, dropping down to the floor to bow. And see our practice. On the inhale, letting the breath pull the spine back up. Head finally lifts, the eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed and feel relaxed and blissed. See you soon.